All right, guys, you already know what time it is right now. We're answering week 8 fantasy football questions. And guys, there are so many injuries this week. Obviously, we're in the bye week season right now. At this point in fantasy football, it's about what you can do to supplement the guys who are going to be missing because there's lots of guys missing. Look, one guy that hasn't been playing well lately, and I understand this, but he's still the quarterback 9 in fantasy football. It's it's Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy is now injured, and he looks like he is probably in line to miss this game on Sunday versus the Cincinnati Bengals. So Sam Darnold's going to start. Well, not only does that not let you play a guy like Brock Purdy in fantasy this week, but it also limits potentially Brandon Ayuk, possibly Christian McCaffrey. So there's lots of injuries this week. Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert both missed practice today. There's so many injuries this week, it's not even funny, guys. So we're answering week 8 fantasy football questions on this live stream tonight, guys. If you support the channel, please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. It is greatly appreciated, you guys, every single day. So put on your questions. Let's go ahead and just start answering some questions right now. Emil Collier, you were the first one here. I appreciate it. Okay. Think Tyreek plays, or do you think this is all smokescreen? Yeah, great question to lead it off with. So, for me personally, the Tyreek Hill injury does not worry me very much. I only mentioned it off the top because it happened. I only mentioned it because it's a fact. He missed practice today. Do I think he's going to miss the game? I don't personally. I mean, this is something consistently that happens. Trevor Augustus, even down low, said it. Vets often get Wednesdays off for very minor stuff. Yes, that's exactly true. So Tyreek Hill missing practice does not worry me because even when you look back to last year with Tyreek Hill specifically, Tyreek Hill was dealing with an ankle injury for the majority of the last couple of games. And he still went in every single one of them because he's just a great talent that's just tough and he's not going to miss games. That's just his reality. Now, when it comes to Raheem Mostert, that's one that I actually do worry about because it's not the fact that Raheem Mostert, he got this serious injury when they played, the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night. I didn't see anything. I watched that whole game. I didn't see him get, I didn't see him down on the field. Didn't see him hobble off or anything. I didn't see anything big. The problem I have with Raheem Mostert is he's older now. He's almost in his mid-30s. And he's also he's got a long injury history. So I'm a little bit more worried about Raheem Mostert than I am with Tyreek Hill. I still am not going to make any rash decisions yet. It's Wednesday, guys. It's the first day of practice. So nobody knows at this point what's going to happen. We can't go too overboard with the concern here, but it's just something to note right now. Paul Meistus, what's going on? Appreciate you being here tonight. What wide receiver should I trade Montgomery for? 12-team PPR league. My other running backs are CMC, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Jerome Ford. My wide receivers are Cooper Kupp, Drake London, Rasheed Rice, and Josh Palmer. Need a legit wide receiver too. So, okay, you basically, if you're trying to sell Montgomery, I can understand the reason why. You've obviously got really good running backs on your team. And you've got Christian McCaffrey, who's obviously RB1, and then Kenneth Walker, top 5 running back easy. So I can understand the merit here. So when you've got a guy like David Montgomery right now, who's just been great in fantasy football when he has played, you can get a lot for him. Now the problem is that right now, people's value on him is going to be lower because he's injured. That's the ultimate problem here with a guy like David Montgomery right now is the fact that he's injured and I don't know when he's coming back. In fact, let's see if we can get an injury update on David Montgomery and maybe if he practiced today. I don't think that he did, but let's take a look. So David Montgomery. Okay, let's see. David Montgomery. Said he was going to be out a little bit. Still looking for this Montgomery update. these freaking articles that post these injuries are so cluttered with such total irrelevant nonsense. Apparently he's got a chance to play this week. So David Montgomery is, he's no shoe-in to play, but he definitely looks like he's got a chance based on this report that I just read from Sportskeeda, which, by the way, Sportskeeda needs to definitely unclutter this article. But yeah, it appears that he looks like he's got a chance to go. So if he goes, like, that obviously raises his value back up. So what I would do personally with a guy like David Montgomery, knowing that he's injured and knowing that you could probably get someone interested. David Montgomery, when he's played, has been he's been a top 12 fantasy running back. So you need to target a wide receiver who's a wide receiver one. You need to target a guy somewhere in the range of like Keenan Allen, coming off a bad week right now. I would target someone like Puka Nacua, also a lower end wide receiver one, but still a wide receiver one in fantasy football right now. I would target somebody like an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown obviously has been great, but he's still the wide receiver 9. So, my point being on this one is that do not sell David Montgomery right now just to sell. Like, I understand that, like, you're needing a wide receiver 2 right now, but from the roster that you've presented to me, you've got a really talented team. So you should not be in a position. I would doubt that you're in a position that is just like you need a win right now, and like you're 2-5 or 3-4 or 1-6. Like, it doesn't look like you're in that position here. So what I would do personally is I would go for one of those top wide receivers that I just named. If I don't get those, I'd be patient and hold, because the reality is when David Montgomery comes back, he's going to be fine. He's going to be producing top tier level fantasy production again. And it's never bad to have that option on your team. Like, that's the thing, is you can get him for proper value when the time comes and he comes back. That's the reason that I say be patient. You've got already a really good team. Don't try to sell him just to sell right now, just to immediately get that wide receiver upgrade, because you've got guys this week that have good matchups, and you will be able to get by this week. Hopefully Montgomery comes back and plays either this week or next week, and you could get full value in return for David Montgomery. So I'm answering fantasy football questions for week 8 this week, guys. So go down there, put in your comments in the chat, put in your questions in the chat. I'm working my way down one by one. And please go down there and drop a like on this live stream and subscribe to the channel to show your support. It is greatly appreciated, guys. Love going live and interacting with my community. And Savvy, what's going on? Flex 1, Mixon, Deontay, or Josh Downs? So this is a good question. Obviously, you've got Deontay, came back off the injury last week and had a decent game. Like, Deontay Johnson is the thing about Deontay is he's always going to be viable to play as a flex because of target share. Like, the guy sees typically around 8 to 12 targets per game. Even with a lower upside offense, the targets are still there. The problem is it's lower upside offense. That's the problem here. So, that's the ultimate issue with Deontay. And they're taking on Jacksonville, which has been a good defense this week. Josh Downs, obviously coming off his best game as a pro, and he's looked really good for weeks now. Josh Downs is a pro-ready rookie, and I said that, before the start of the season, and even before he got drafted to the Indianapolis Colts. So, I like Josh Downs, the player. Now, the matchup this week is tough. New Orleans is no slouch. So I'm not exactly a huge fan of that. And then Joe Mixon is just like, if you watch my running back rankings video today, you know that I said Joe Mixon is not inspiring. Like, I've got no desire to put Joe Mixon in my lineup because he's just not been an inspiring player. But the reality is he has been more steady than those other options. And I still do believe he has the higher ceiling than all of them because of the fact that he's on a better offense than all of them. And I get it. Cincinnati's not been great, but, he's in a situation where Cincinnati, I think, is getting it going. I think they're starting to get it going offensively. And that's huge for Joe Mixon because Joe Mixon has been inefficient. And that's because they really haven't been able to get a run game going because the defense knows they don't have to respect it. So if they start if they start slinging it, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and they find their groove and T. Higgins gets better, Joe Mixon's going to become a better fantasy player week to week as a result of that. So I'll go with Joe Mixon this week. San Francisco looks like listen, I still think San Francisco is a top tier team in this league, but there's no question that something right now is not right. And like they are looking like they're probably going to be without Brock Purdy this week. That's a problem. So San Francisco, they've got issues. I'll go ahead and take Joe Mixon here because I know the workload is consistent, and I also know that he really does have the highest upside week to week overall than those other two guys right here. Bob Kopp, what's going on? Which three would you pick out of Olave, Deontay Johnson, Cortland Sutton, Gabe Davis, and Kendrick Bourne? Great question right here. I'm definitely going with Olave. Like, as long as Chris Olave plays, which I have seen no indication that he is not going to, I'm playing Chris Olave still. And I said it like on my Monday night live stream. The news of his arrest broke right before my live stream on Monday night. And I addressed it briefly. And I said, listen, like, he was speeding and he got arrested for it. Like, it's obviously not a great look, but it's not like he's in danger of missing games as far as I've seen. So I'm not really worried about Chris Olave's situation. As long as he plays, I'm playing him because he just simply has higher upside than all of these guys. Sutton to me is playing. He's clearly the wide receiver one right now, and he's finding the end zone. So to me, like, I got to pick Sutton. I got to pick Sutton this week. I'll go Olave and I'll go Sutton. And then it's really between Gabe Davis and Deontay Johnson. And to me, I always say I'm shooting for upside in fantasy football. And that Deontay Johnson hasn't found the end zone since 2021. Like, he can't find the end zone. Gabe Davis is always a shoe-in to get something. So not always, but I mean, he's always got a way better shot to do it than Deontay. So I'll play Gabe Davis. I'll go with Olave if he plays. I'll go with Sutton, and I'll go with Gabe Davis. Trigger Trey, what's going on? I appreciate the super chat. Need a wide receiver 2 and a flex out of Kenneth Walker, Brandon Ayuk, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, and Jordan Addison. So we're needing a wide receiver 2 here. So it's going to be between Ayuk or Drake London or Garrett Wilson or Jordan Addison. So Jordan Addison's the guy for sure. Jordan Addison is no question the guy you go with here. The thing about Garrett Wilson made a return on my top 30 wide receiver rankings video this week. The thing about him is his upside really isn't that high because of the quarterback that he's catching passes from. And I get it. Like, I want to say that, like, I'm going all in on Garrett Wilson again, but I just can't do that to my audience. Like, the upside is just simply not there. The target share is there. That's not the problem here. The target share is 100% there. It's the upside, and there's not much of it right now. So Addison, with his upside, like, there's no question to me. Ayuk could be a challenger if Brock Purdy was playing. Brock Purdy is likely not going to be playing, though, because he's in the concussion protocol. And I can't recall, I do not think there has been one single player this year that was in the concussion protocol leading up to a week that played the same week. I don't think it's happened yet because the NFL is trying to get away from that stuff. They're trying to get away from the bad press because the media, they know, is going to attack them like relentlessly for it. So, yeah, they're trying to get away from that. To me, Drake London, like, as hot as he's been right now, doesn't live up to Jordan Addison's upside. So Addison's going to be my wide receiver too. And then I'm definitely going with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's got to be in your flex. Like, Kenneth Walker, it's hard to imagine sitting him. Like, as of right now, there's no way I would. Like, there's just no way. Not Jordan Addison. Kenneth Walker has been consistently inside of my top 10 to 5 rankings in fantasy football all year long because he deserves it. Like, he's been fantastic in fantasy football. So I'm a big fan of Kenneth Walker this year. I think he's great. So yeah, easy. This is a good one for me. Jordan Addison is going to be my wide receiver too. And then Kenneth Walker as well. And then you had another super chat. And this time it was trade Drake London or Amari Cooper for T. Higgins. Kincaid or Ingram this week? Okay, so I'll answer one at a time. So we're going with, if you can get, this is going to be controversial, and I already know this. Like, I would trade Drake London before I trade Amari Cooper. And here's the reason why I do it is because both of these guys are in a situation where they're clearly their number one wide receiver in the offense. And really, neither of them have the quarterback consistency that is going to be helping them week to week. Like they both got issues of their own, and they're very similar issues. The reason I'm going to go with Amari Cooper here is because of the reality with Drake London is that he's so easily losing targets on a week to week basis or gaining them. And yeah, when it's good, it's good. Like Drake London, if he's getting targeted, he's gonna catch the ball because he's just a really good player that deserves more work. But the downside of it is that there are weeks, like we saw in week 1, where he gets like one target. And that's not the only week that he's had like sub 5 targets. If he's getting sub 5 targets, the offense and Desmond Ridder are simply not good enough to give Drake London consistent upside. Say what you want about Amari Cooper. His volume is always consistent. It's always consistent. I'll take Amari Cooper. They're very close for me. I would send Drake London. And if you can get it for T. Higgins, I actually think you can right now. That's the good thing about this is that I actually do think you get Drake London. You could get T. Higgins for Drake London, and I would take that type of deal. And then Kincaid or Ingram, I'm going to go with, this is so good because I've got my tight end ranking video coming out tomorrow. So make sure, stay tuned, watch that video. I'm not going to go too deep into this one, but I will stick with Ingram on this one because Ingram is he's just been way more consistent than Kincaid. I'm excited about Kincaid. Obviously, Dawson Knox is injured right now. He's on IR. Or he's not on IR, but he just had surgery. Dude's going to be out a while. So I've got excitement for Dalton Kincaid, but I'm not ready to say I'm there yet because I know that Evan Ingram consistently does it on a week-to-week basis. So again, appreciate your super chats, Trigger Trade. Not only does it help me, it helps the channel, and it also gets your question to the front of the line, guys. So if you want to get your question in as soon as possible, get your question answered immediately, the best way to hop the line is to do a super thanks donation. You can see the chat is filling up right now. Angel Frias, appreciate the super chat. Christian Watson practice still a must start. Absolutely not a must start. And I'll tell you this right now, like Christian Watson, here's the problem with him is that I discussed this on my Monday night live stream where I go every Monday night. If you do not know this, I do go live and I do a live stream of what I got right and what I got wrong in my fantasy football analysis for the week. So I like to be as transparent as possible. And I said leading up to last week that Christian Watson was a great start. And I was saying, play the guy. He's ready to go. Yeah, the problem with that is that his quarterback sucks. Jordan Love is not good. And we know at this point he's not good. I don't think anybody's arguing this right now. Jordan Love against the Denver Broncos put up 17 points coming off a bye week. So bad. And Christian Watson is not he's not absolved of his own problems, right? Like, he's not as versatile of a wide receiver. He doesn't go over the middle of the field. He doesn't run a bunch of slant routes, a bunch of, quick curl routes. Like, that's not Christian Watson's game. So if your quarterback's limited and your wide receiver's limited, it's usually not a good combination. So Christian Watson to me is very dependent. And I'll tell you this, like I have Christian Watson and Jackson Smith-Njigba in one of my redraft leagues on ESPN, and I'm playing Jackson Smith-Njigba this week. I just am. And I get it, like Christian Watson practiced today, full practice, like doesn't look like he's going to miss this game. But to me, like when I see the trajectory that both players are on and the offenses they're attached to, Jackson Smith-Njigba's trajectory is up and to the right, and Christian Watson's trajectory, I wouldn't say it's necessarily down and to the right, but we just have to acknowledge that this guy is on a bad offense, and he hasn't really done much this year to warrant being a must start. So yeah, it's largely going to be very matchup dependent moving forward on Christian Watson. And again, Angel, I appreciate your super chat. It's how you hop the line right here, guys. So I'm going down one by one, trying to answer as many questions as possible right now. So Lewis 29. Pick 2 running backs and 1 flex. Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Chris Olave, and T. Higgins. So we're definitely going to play Tony Pollard for sure. Tony Pollard coming off the bye week, coming into a matchup against the Rams defense that is pretty paper thin. Like they're not a good defense. So I'll definitely go with Tony Pollard here. Tony Pollard's going to be one of the guys. Jonathan Taylor's is going to be the other running back I'm going to go with because of his explosion game that he had last week. And Jonathan Taylor week to week is going to be still not like in the top 10 as of right now. I still want to see a little bit more with Jonathan Taylor before I rank him inside my top 10. But Jonathan Taylor clearly is on the trajectory of being back to who he used to be. He looks explosive. Watch him on the field, and the guy looks really, really explosive still. So I've got no issues with his play right now. And the only really concern I have is that he's got Zach Moss. And I said this on my running back ranking video today. I don't think Zach Moss is going away. I just don't. Like, the guy has been too good for them to just say, we're just going to stick you right back on the bench. Appreciate your service. You're doing great. Like, that's not going to happen. Zach Moss has been too good. So that's really the only concern I have, though. But Jonathan Taylor is going to be the other running back. And then it's really going to be between Olave and Josh Jacobs. They're both very, very close in my weekly rankings this week. Josh Jacobs, obviously the matchup is not good. They're playing the Detroit Lions, who are pissed coming into this week, coming off of just an embarrassing bludgeoning that they got from the Ravens. And Josh Jacobs just has not been very good this year. Chris Olave, the reason I'm going to go with Olave here is because Olave still sees the target share. And Josh Jacobs sees the volume, but the matchup here is going to be in Olave's favor over Josh Jacobs' favor. So they're both in the same matchup, obviously. And New Orleans is playing Indianapolis, and the Raiders are playing Detroit on Monday night. I'll go with Olave this week. As long as Olave plays, like I said, guys, don't be too worried about this situation here. Remember just a couple months ago, before the start of the season, Mr. Jordan Addison was going like 140 in a like 35 or 50 or something like that. So like the NFL didn't do anything to him. Like I'm not on this channel to have a morality discussion about this. I'm simply here to analyze what the NFL is going to do with him and if he's going to miss time, because that affects fantasy football. I've got no interest in having morality debate on this one. So as far as fantasy goes, if Chris Olave plays, I'm definitely going to be playing him over most options at this point in fantasy right now. So I'm answering week 8 fantasy football questions live tonight. Put your question in the chat, and if you want to hot the line, the best way to do it is to do a super thanks donation and get your question answered immediately. But either way, guys, if you support the channel, please go down there and drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Love interacting with you guys every single day. I just love the community I'm building here at Football Fanalysts Network. All right, so JC, how do you feel about Josh Jacobs' rest of season in full PPR? My quarterbacks are Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, so I might trade Jacobs and Myers, then Cousins for Lamar. My other running backs are Bijan, JT, then wide receivers are Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Waddle, Collins. I like. Yes, your wide receivers are in really, really good shape. So, like, I'm not worried about your wide receiver core at all. Josh Jacobs, here's my thing on Josh Jacobs' rest of the season. And I don't want to spoil too much, guys, because just a spoiler alert, my running back rest of season rankings video will be coming out on this Friday. So you will see how I feel about the rest of season running back rankings on Friday. And my outlook for Josh Jacobs is it's somewhere between a rock and a hard place, to be honest with you guys, because Josh Jacobs, the good thing about it that I discussed earlier today is that he's still seeing all of the volume. Like, volume is not an issue here when it comes to Josh Jacobs. He's handling over 20 opportunities per game. Both carries and both carries and targets. Combine those two, he's still seeing over 20 opportunities per game. So his importance to the offense has not gone away. They're not switching to Zamir White. The problem that he's seeing is he's just not looking near. He doesn't even look half as good as he did last year, and it's disappointing to me because he's on a contract year again. He's playing basically on the franchise tag. So like, I'm disappointed that he has not looked better. And honestly, I don't know where to go from here with him. He's one of the harder guys I've had to evaluate rest of season because there's things that you already know from what we remember and what we've seen from him. He's got upside. So like, it's hard to let that go when you saw what he did last year because you don't want to be the guy who got rid of Josh Jacobs right before he turned on the Jets. The problem that I have with Josh Jacobs ultimately comes down to the team he's on. The Raiders they're not the worst team in the league, but they're always this close to being that team. Like they're always this close to just complete implosion. And obviously the Devonte Adams stuff has complicated this whole situation. There's just a lot of things I don't like. So my outlook for him on the rest of the season is like I think he's a middle end running back too. I think he's about the running back 16 to 17 rest of season for me. And again, I'll tell you a little bit more about how I feel about him in my rest of season running back rankings. That video is coming out on Friday, so just stay tuned for that. But you've obviously got pieces here to move around, so don't sell Jacobs just to sell. Like he still has plenty of value as a running back too. Trevor Augustus. I was offered A-Chain for Gibbs. I was starting him this week, but should I do that next week if he still will? So here's the thing. You're offered A-Chain for Gibbs, and A-Chain has at this point missed 2 games. So he's got basically 2 more to go. Just want to make sure that is the case. Let me check on that really quick. Devon A-Chain. He went on the IR on October 15th. So, yes, he has missed 2 games now. And so he's, basically going to be, it looks like by all reports, he's looking like he's going to be back after that 4-week miss. So that's a good sign. Like it shows that he's probably going to be ready to go. So Gibbs is obviously I called him a buy low trade target weeks ago. And I hope that you did. But for me, Jahmyr Gibbs is in a situation where the value is going to be very fluctuant. And that's as a direct correlation with when David Montgomery returns. The good thing about Devon A-Chain is that whenever he returns, he gets value immediately because Raheem Mostert, I said this before the A-Chain injury, is that my problem with Mostert is that he's got a long injury history. Guy typically does not hold up for a full 17 games. That's just not how Raheem Mostert has done in his career so far. So I love A-Chain's value. I really do. What it really ultimately comes down to here, Trevor, is the fact of what is your team record right now and what is your outlook? Because if you're in a situation where you're 5-1 or you're 6-0 or even 4-2 and your team around Gibbs is already very high upside and you feel very comfortable, yes, I would do this trade because I'd rather give up a week or 2 of more great Jahmyr Gibbs, who I know for a fact that his value will decrease when David Montgomery returns, to get a Devon A-Chain who has clear value when he returns. So, but on the other hand, if you're in a situation where you're 2-4 or you're 1-5, or I'm sorry, if you're 2-5 or you're 1-6 and you need a win desperately just to have a chance to save your season, then I would say stick with Gibbs because you need him right now. You can't afford to trade players on the upside of future when you're in a situation like that where you need to get a win ASAP. So it depends here. I love the value. If you're in a good situation, I would take this trade. But if you're not in a great situation, I still would stick with Gibbs. All right. Anthony Villarosa, 10-team PPR, 3-4. I have Justin Jefferson, Bijan, Pollard, Barkley, Spears, Diggs, Waddle, Addison, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ridley, Cousins, Kyler, Kincaid, Ingram. Should I trade for Eckler or Devonte Adams? So you're 3-4. you're in a situation where you're probably in the middle, towards the middle of the pack of your league right now, right? So it's hard to say that like you should just go out and get upside, even if the guy is just like on IR right now, right? Like it's hard to tell you to do that because you still do need to keep winning to start to separate yourself from the league. So when I'm looking at your team right here, looking at your running back situation, you've got 3 running backs who have plenty of upside. There's just plenty of upside on in your running back room right now. And then wide receiver wise, it's a little bit weak right now. So obviously with no Justin Jefferson, you took a big hit. You've got Addison, who's playing really well right now, obviously, but as soon as Justin Jefferson comes back, that's going to change. Like he's still going to be good, but he's not going to be what he is now. And then you've got Jackson the Jigba, I think is rising. Ridley, I don't want him on my team. So I would try to go for a Devonte Adams personally, because to me, in your situation, actually, Devonte Adams is the perfect trade target because this is a guy who you could get on a discount as compared to what his real value is in fantasy football. For me personally, yeah, I would try to get Devonte Adams on the cheap and try to send him an offer. Like looking at your team, I would try to send him an offer of like Calvin Ridley and maybe, I was gonna say Barkley and Calvin Ridley, but that's a little too much for me right now, actually. I think you could get him for cheaper. I do. So for me personally, if I was to do something like that, I would want to make sure that I get a good running back in return. If he's got a running back, say in the range of like Derrick Henry or, Isaiah Pacheco right now, still a little bit undervalued in my opinion in fantasy football. That's a move I would try to make. But I don't think you need to pay too much for Devonte Adams. And I actually think Devonte is like the perfect trade target for your type of team right now. Rolando RG, what's going on, my man? Start sit Josh Palmer, Christian Watson, then Michael Pittman, Rasheed Rice. So first 2, you're obviously Josh Palmer, Christian Watson. I'm going to start Josh Palmer over Christian Watson. Listen, the reality with this is there's 2 reasons why. Number 1, Josh Palmer has just been playing better than Christian Watson. And I never thought that Josh Palmer was some great player, but he's looked good lately. Like I've actually been shocked watching him. I did not think he was a very good player, and he's looked pretty good. So Josh Palmer has just been playing better than Christian Watson at this point. And as well, the offensive upside is just way higher. So I'll take Josh Palmer this week. The matchup doesn't scare me at all for the Chargers. I think that they're going to rebound in a big way against the Chicago Bears, who, by the way, are an awful pass defense. Awful. So I love Josh Palmer this week over Christian Watson. And then Michael Pittman or Rasheed Rice. I'll still play Pittman here because here's the thing about Rasheed Rice, guys. And I got some comments on my video yesterday that I did ranking the top 30 wide receivers for week 8. And I got comments. I left Rasheed Rice off the top 30. I stand by it because here's the problem with Rasheed Rice is that you have 2 established weapons in that offense. It's Travis Kelce, number 1, undisputed. And then number 2 is Isaiah Pacheco now. Like, he is their weapon number 2. Not wide receiver 2, their weapon number 2. They've got no clear answer at wide receiver 2. Now, Rasheed Rice is becoming that answer. And I do think that over the next few weeks, if he continues to play well, he will solidify himself. I need to see a little bit more because the problem with him versus Pittman is that Pittman consistently sees targets, right? Like he consistently sees targets. And let's not forget this, guys. Like Pittman's been playing well this year. And here's what I think is the reason for it. Dude's on a contract here. So what I saw after the loss to the Cleveland Browns, Michael Pittman had a good day, but it was saved by a long touchdown. 70-plus yard touchdown is what saved Michael Pittman's week. Without that, it was not good, and he knew it too because after the game, he was not happy with his usage. Well, there's a reason why he did that, and obviously every good wide receiver wants the ball. Like, not like every wide receiver, period, wants the ball, but if you're on a contract here and you're trying to prove your value, get as much money as you can on your next contract, you really want the ball. So I think Michael Pittman is very motivated right now. This week in particular, Michael Pittman taking on the Saints is not ideal. And I can understand, like Rasheed Rice, I can understand the matchup. They're playing the Denver Broncos this week. Totally get it. But again, do not forget, like Rasheed Rice, his target share is still not very high. Like he's averaging typically around like 5 to 7 targets per week. So that's just not high enough. And if they get up early on the Denver Broncos and they don't need to throw the ball, they won't. They won't throw the ball. So I'll take Michael Pittman here still. I think that just not only is his floor safer, but I do think that his upside still is higher week to week. I'm answering week 8 fantasy football questions tonight, guys. So please go down there, show your support by dropping a like on the live stream and subscribing to the channel. And guys, I'll be on here for probably another 30 minutes here. So if you want to make sure your question does get answered, the best way to jump the line is to do a super thanks donation in the chat below. So trying to answer as many questions as I can right now, but there's a lot of questions. You can see how full the chat is right now. So the best way to jump the line is to do a super thanks donation. Okay. So Goat, what's going on? Goat. Oh, yo, I got Adams, Ayuk, Chase, Palmer, Deontay, but my running backs are Connor, Henry, Brian Robinson, Tajay, and Foreman. What do you think I need to change? I'm 3 and 4. So you're 3 and 4, obviously very similar situation to a question that we just addressed. So, the problem that you're obviously seeing is that you've got 2 wide receivers who are typically very, very good options who are just in a little bit of a slump right now in fantasy football. I get it. Like Ayuk and Adams, it's not been fun, but I'm still playing them for sure. Your running backs are a problem for sure. Like Connor's obviously on the IR. Now, he's returning pretty soon here, but that is a problem for sure. So you've got Henry's a solid running back too. Like Henry's a top end running back too. He's just not running back 1 like he used to be. And then you're also looking at a situation where you've got guys like your other running backs. Brian Robinson is so fluctuating week to week. You saw me rank him as a running back 3 this week, mid-end running back 3 this week. So, I've got issues with him. For me personally, I would want to upgrade your running back room. Your running back room just doesn't have not only enough depth, but it also just doesn't have enough upside. There's not enough upside there. You've got wide receivers here. So, like, Josh Palmer, like, his value is rising. Deontay Johnson, his value is relatively stable in fantasy football week to week. So, I would try to package one of those guys, a Palmer or Deontay Johnson, and, package together, with a guy like James Conner coming off an injury, who I think you could actually sell for some real value. Try to upgrade at running back here. Try to get yourself an Isaiah Pacheco, someone in the range of Josh Jacobs, I think is an upgrade as well. So that's what I would try to do personally. Tony Brown, appreciate the super chat. I have Jackson Smith-Njigba. Is it time to start him over Jacoby Myers, Michael Pittman, or Zay Flowers, who I have starting already? And who should he go in for? Great question right here. So, I love Jackson Smith-Njigba. Like I'll start this out by saying that I am a big Jackson Smith-Njigba truther, and I have been forever. Really, like that's like since I can remember watching the guy play football, I've been in on the guy. So I'm a big fan. Here's the problem with this situation, though, is that when we're looking at a guy who I believe, and it seems like a lot of my audience does believe that Jackson Smith-Njigba is on the trajectory. He's on the right trajectory. He's on the come up right now. So when you see a guy on the come up, you want to play him. Like I understand that. We need to pump the brakes sometimes, though, on who we're playing him over. So, like, Zay Flowers, to me, there's no chance I would play Jackson Smith-Njigba over him because Zay Flowers has shown the upside that Jackson Smith-Njigba showed in one game throughout the season. And he's had more targets than Jackson Smith-Njigba every single week. So, like, I can't start him and tell my audience to start Jackson Smith-Njigba over Zay Flowers. When I look at Jacoby Myers, the guy is also seeing a really good amount of targets week to week, consistently seeing plenty of targets per week. So I can't tell you to do that either, even though they're taking on the Lions, the target share is there, and he's been in the end zone a lot this year. Michael Pittman is the guy that I would consider because of the matchup here. But again, it's just not enough consistency yet from a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba. See, to me, like a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba is going into my lineup this week, and like I said this earlier in the live stream, Jackson Smith-Njigba is going in my lineup in place of guys like Christian Watson, who is dealing with injuries this year, and he's also just dealing with a bad quarterback and has not been consistent. So that's the kind of guy I'm playing Jackson Smith-Njigba over. You know, I would play Jackson Smith-Njigba over a guy like Terry McLaurin. I would play him over Terry McLaurin because his offensive upside is higher in Seattle than it is in Washington and against the Eagles defense. That's the list of guys that like I'm considering him. That's the tier of guys I'm considering playing Jackson Smith-Njigba over. Josh Downs, like I would play personally Jackson Smith-Njigba. So we just need to address his overall like trajectory this week, which is that I think he's going to continue to get more involved. I really do. I don't have a problem with like playing him over the guys I named. But when you're talking about guys who have been consistent in their production this year, like all of them have been consistent fantasy production wise. And they're all consistently getting more production and more opportunities with the ball. So I can't tell you to start him over those guys. Again, Tony, I appreciate the super chat. Not only does it help me and help support the channel, but it also gets your question to the front of the line. And if you want to get your question answered immediately, the best way to jump the line is to do a super thanks donation. But I'll be on here for another 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, guys. So put in your questions in the chat. You can see how full the chat is. So if you do want to hop that line, doing a super thanks donation is the best way to do it. But regardless, appreciate every one of y'all here, and I'm trying to answer as many questions as possible. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Okay. Paul Meistis. Starting Josh Allen, Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, Cooper Kupp, Drake London, Laporta, Breece Hall, Ravens defense, Cleveland kicker, Dustin Hopkins. Bench Connor Montgomery, Rice, Palmer, Jason Ford. Traded for Puka and Mostert to get Christian McCaffrey. Rate my team. So going through it step by step. Josh Allen obviously has struggled lately, but it does not change the fact what his upside is. With a guy like Josh Allen, and even with like a top tier quarterback like Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts in fantasy football, you're just going to have to ride out the highs and lows with him. Josh Allen's still a top tier quarterback in fantasy, though. No question about it. So love your quarterback position. Christian McCaffrey, obviously running back one. Your running back room is great. Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, they're both top 5 running backs in fantasy football. So great job right there. You've got 2 injured running backs who have good upside. One of them definitely higher than the other and has more longevity than the other. But and that guy is Montgomery over Connor. But Connor is still a good option because he's got value in trades. That's the reason why I like him right now. Your wide receivers, I would like to see some more upside immediately. And the reason I say immediately is because when I'm looking at your roster right now, you've got guys who have upside. It's just not immediate. You've got Rice. You've got JSN. The way I view Rasheed Rice and Jackson Smith-Njigba is like, it's like when you plant a tree, right? Like you plant a tree, you put the seeds down, you sprinkle some soil, like you put it under soil and like you sprinkle water on it daily and you wait for it to grow. And when it grows, it's beautiful and you're happy you did it. That's kind of the way I view Rasheed Rice and Jackson Smith-Njigba right now. They're both in that stage where we planted them long ago, right? Like we planted those trees long ago. Still using the tree analogy here. So like we planted them long ago and now they're starting to sprout and we're starting to see that. And it's like, it's exciting, but they're not trees yet. They're not trees yet. And they can't give you consistent upside week to week. So when I look at like guys like that on your bench, I'm happy to see those guys. But at the same time, when I see your starting wide receiver is Drake London, I get a little bit nervous there because Drake London is very similar to those guys actually, but he's developed. He's a great player. The problem with him is his offensive upside is always week to week. It's always in flux. So for me personally, like I do think that if you get a better wide receiver too, you're going to be in like just tip top shape. I would still say it's a very good contending team though. Like the way it is right now, your flex spot is great because you've got great running backs. That's the good thing, is that your running back position is supplementing some weaknesses that you have at wide receiver. And your tight end is great. You've obviously got a great defense and obviously got a great kicker with Dustin Hopkins. So I like your roster right here. Rome 710, I appreciate the super chat. Mixon or James Cook this week? I'm assuming it's for this week. So if it's for this week, I'm going with James Cook, and I'll tell you why. So James Cook, I had a couple spots above Joe Mixon this week in my running back rankings video for week 8. So the reason that I have him there is that, like, I discussed James Cook in the sense of, like, I compared him to Rachaad White, and I compared him to Alexander Mattison. The reason I compared him to those guys is because the volume is it's not only not there, like when it's tip top, it's not even like elite level. It's in this, when he gets tip top up, when he gets the most amount of volume, it's usually around like 16 to 18 carries. Like that's a good week for James Cook. That's a great week for opportunities. What separates James Cook from the Rachaad Whites and the Alexander Madisons is that the dude's efficient. The dude's good. He's averaging just under 5 yards per carry. The dude gives the offense the spark. The problem is that the Bills just don't use him consistently enough because they've been like this since Sean McDermott and Josh Allen have been there. They are way too dependent on Josh Allen. Way too dependent. And I'm not just talking about throwing the ball. Like they run this guy way too much. He's got the ball in his hands carrying way too much. They need to use more of James Cook. Now, this week, I like it because I think that Tampa Bay, when I look at their team, like their defense has been really good this year. Now, obviously, last week they underperformed in fantasy football, but the reason I like this James Cook situation this week is because Buffalo is coming into this game where Tampa Bay's got injuries on offense. Chris Godwin's coming into the game questionable. Baker Mayfield's coming into the game questionable. So they could be – I haven't seen any indication that one of those two guys is going to miss. But if they're limited, as bad as Baker Mayfield has looked already, like I can't imagine that Tampa Bay is not going to fall in a hole. I really can't. So I think James Cook could be in line for more work because, listen, over the weeks, like they've been in really close games. And they obviously lost against the Patriots last week. So Buffalo's natural instinct and their natural predisposition as an offense is to throw the ball. Well, if they're in a lead, they can run James Cook and feel comfortable doing it. So I think they will be in a lead. It's a game script thing for me here. Joe Mixon just simply hasn't shown the upside that James Cook has either. James Cook and Joe Mixon, looking at their numbers side by side, Joe Mixon is not nearly as efficient as James Cook. Cook's averaging just under 5 yards per carry. Mixon's barely averaging. He's actually just under 4 yards per carry. So like the efficiency is so much different. The volume is a little bit more in Joe Mixon's favor, but if I'm getting the upside from James Cook in a week where I think they will be having a good offensive performance because of the reality with Tampa Bay's offense, I'd rather go with James Cook. I think he's got more upside in this matchup than Joe Mixon does. And by the way, Joe Mixon, he's taken on a defense that, as bad as they looked the other night versus Minnesota, their defense, rushing defense, is still top tier. So I don't think there's much there for Joe Mixon this week. But again, Rome, I appreciate your super chat. And Daniel McDonough, I appreciate your super chat, man. Who for flex? Myers, Jacobs, Collins, or Flowers? So you've got good options here. Like this is a good problem to have. Like you've got guys who, like, I would typically say, like, start most of them, start all of them, really. So really, I'll rule two guys out. I'm going to rule out Jacoby Myers, and I'm going to rule out Josh Jacobs. I'm going to rule those guys out because they're both in a matchup where I think they're just going to be struggling so mightily this week. against against the Lions, who are coming in pissed. The Lions, I think, are going to go do work on the Raiders this week. So I've got issues with the matchup. Now, the good thing for Jacoby Myers is that he's going to get targets regardless. But when I look at him compared to Nico Collins, when I look at him compared to Zay Flowers, both of those guys are in better matchups and they're in better offenses entirely. So I'll rule out the two Raiders because Josh Jacobs, I think it's a bad week lining up for him against the Lions. And Jacoby Myers, even though he's been really good, he's been very consistent. I don't think his ceiling is as high as Collins and Flowers this week. Looking at Nico Collins is in a great matchup this week, taking on the Carolina Panthers. No reservations here. And I've said this for a while. I'm much higher on Nico Collins than what it appears to be the consensus of other fantasy football YouTubers. Nico Collins is a very good wide receiver. No question about it. So I really like Nico Collins personally. Zay Flowers this week is a great matchup as well. And Zay Flowers is consistently getting better. And the involvement has been there from the get-go. So to me, they're very close. Nico Collins, Zay Flowers, they're very close in my rankings this week. I'm going to end up going with Nico Collins, though, because the matchup is just as good. And the thing about with Nico Collins and Zay Flowers is that they really are right around the same target total per week. And so what it comes down to in that case, if you're getting the same amount of volume, is it comes down to your efficiency and your big play capability. And so far this season, Nico Collins is averaging just under 100 yards per game. That's what I'm saying when I say Nico Collins is much better than people think in fantasy football. So I get it, week to week, he has had dead games, but I will go with the guy that I know has a tremendous amount of upside, and we just haven't seen the upside that Nico Collins has shown us from Zay Flowers yet. But none of them are bad options. I'll say that again. But again, Daniel, I appreciate your super chat. Not only does it get you to the front of the line, it helps support us as a channel as well. And I'm going to be on here for about another 10 minutes, guys. So get your questions in. If you want to hop the line, the best way to do it is through super thanks. Rome 710, you were next up. Stevenson or Myers for flex? I will go ahead and go with Myers in that situation. Yes, I will play Myers because Myers, I still think, does have more upside than Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson, I said that he was a better play this week. Not only because I think that, when you look at what he's done and what the Patriots have done, he has improved in fantasy football, but Jacoby Myers just has better upside. That's just as simple as that. Because Ramondre Stevenson on his best game, he's getting 15 points. Jacoby Myers on his best game, getting you 20 to 25. So Jacoby Myers' upside is just higher. And that's the thing about being a wide receiver in an offensive matchup where you're going to be down, is that it doesn't matter. You're going to get targets either way, whether you're winning or losing, unless you're blowing the other team out and you're not throwing the ball. If you're getting blown out, you're throwing the ball. So and the defense is playing prevent defense. So they're not playing press. So I'll go with Myers here. I think his upside is better, and I actually think his floor is safer as well. King 12, appreciate the super chat. Should I trade DK Metcalf for Nico Collins? 100%. 100%. No doubt about it. If you can get someone who will take DK for Nico Collins, it's a no-brainer. You ever seen that meme, that gif of Kramer from Seinfeld where he gets up and he immediately shakes the guy's hand because it's take the deal, take the deal. That's exactly how I feel about a DK Metcalf trade for Nico Collins. If you can get Nico Collins for DK Metcalf, that's 100% a move I would make. It's not even a question here. So 100% Nico Collins. As I explained, Nico Collins is averaging just under 100 yards in fantasy football this season. Let me just tell you what DK Metcalf is doing right now. DK Metcalf not only is irritating his team by getting penalties and then showing no remorse for damaging his team in the process, but DK Metcalf is averaging 67 yards per game and he's averaging 6 targets per game. So the workload has not been there. And the upside is always there with DK Metcalf because he's a very good football player, but the consistency is not there like it is for Nico Collins. And frankly, the ceiling isn't either based on volume. So absolutely take Nico Collins for sure. Also, if you can, Dustin Hopkins or Brandon Aubrey rest of the season. So this is a great question because obviously there's a lot of hype surrounding Dustin Hopkins right now because of that output that he just put against the Indianapolis Colts. Dude had 20 plus fantasy points in week 7. It was awesome because I got a lot of comments after that game. And obviously I had Dustin Hopkins highly ranked in my kicker video last week, which by the way, if you don't know, every single week I do kicker rankings for the week in fantasy football. And tomorrow, the week 8 fantasy football kickers video will be out at 8 a.m. Central. So make sure you're staying tuned and watching that video. But rest of season purposes, this is when you got to think bigger picture, right? Because as great as the week was for Hopkins, and really he's been good, for the whole season, Brandon Aubrey has been just as good for a longer period of time. So I think that as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking at Brandon Aubrey and I'm still going to take him because of the fact that when I look at kickers in fantasy football, if you watch my kicker ranking videos, you know that my thing with kickers is that I like kickers in offenses that are capable of getting you down there, but aren't efficient finishing. And that's what Cleveland is, and that's what Dallas is. Dallas does not always finish. They're kicking a lot of field goals this year. So I'll take Aubrey because he's done it longer, and I've seen it more than I have with Dustin Hopkins. I get it. It's hard to it's hard to move off a guy who just got you 20 plus points in fantasy football, but kickers are very week to week. And that's why I do kicker rankings every single week. So again, appreciate your super chat, King Twal. Samuel Piazza, you were up next. Need to stream a quarterback. Dak, Trevor Lawrence, or Jordan Love. Definitely not Jordan Love. We're not doing Jordan Love right now. I cannot tell my audience in good faith to start Jordan Love. I do not want to put you guys in a bad spot. Do not play Jordan Love. Public service announcement on that one. When I look at Trevor Lawrence versus Dak Prescott, Dak's got the much better matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. He's got a much better matchup. The problem is that he doesn't have a high ceiling this year in fantasy. He just doesn't. It just hasn't been there for Dak Prescott. So I've got problems with his upside. Trevor Lawrence's upside is there. And here's the thing, as great as Pittsburgh's defense is, and I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So for those of you who are new, I've got family Pittsburgh Steelers blood. Steelers fan is in my blood. So but I always say my fantasy football analysis comes first. And for those of you who have been with me, you know how critical I am of the Steelers. I'm very critical of the Steelers, but I will acknowledge that their defense is very good. But I will say that they're always they're so capable of just looking like a bottom 5 defense. Now, do I think it's going to be this week? I don't know if I'm going to say that, but Jacksonville's offense, what I'll say about them is they're finding a groove right now. Jacksonville's offense looks good. So Trevor Lawrence to me is going to be my play here because they're finding their groove, and he's just got a lot of weapons on this offense, more than Dak has. So I'll go with Trevor Lawrence here. Again, Samuel, appreciate the super chat. ZLXQL, appreciate the super chat. PPR traded Ayuk for David Montgomery and Lamb for W ? I'm 4-3, need help. I start Raheem, Saquon Barkley, or Monty this week at running back 2, considering Lamb at flex, or should I sit him out? Okay, so we're looking at this, and you're starting Raheem Mostert, Saquon, or David Montgomery. Obviously, you can't. You are likely not going to be able to start David Montgomery this week. From what I've seen, he's got a chance to play, but David Montgomery may very well not play. And the problem with David Montgomery is that if we don't know for sure what's happening with David Montgomery, he's on a Monday night game. So if we don't know for sure by Sunday, I can't tell my audience to play a guy on Monday night who may not go. So Montgomery is likely out of this matchup. And to me, if Raheem Mostert plays, and Raheem Mostert, if you don't know, Raheem Mostert did not practice today with an injury. So I'm curious to see how that week progresses. It's early to tell, but I will say this. If Raheem Mostert plays, I play him over Saquon Barkley because the matchup is better. Saquon, as great as he is, and as much of the offense he is, and he's the whole offense of the Giants, the matchup sucks here, and Raheem Mostert's upside is just higher. So I will go with Raheem Mostert if he plays. If he doesn't play, then I will go with Saquon Barkley. Good thing is they're both playing on Sunday. So if we will know more by then without damaging your choices here, because we'll hear by 10:30 a.m. 10:30 a.m. Central Time if Raheem Mostert goes or not. If we don't get an update already. So if Raheem Mostert goes, I'll play him. If he doesn't go, I'll play Saquon. Considering starting Lamb at the flex, I would try to start Lamb for sure. I would definitely. Okay, you traded Ayuk for Montgomery and Lamb. So yeah, I would personally try to get CeeDee Lamb out there in my lineup. That's what I would personally try to do. So, I think that, to me, to be honest with you, like they're in a situation where it's like CeeDee Lamb was getting, like, he started out disappointing, no question about it, but he's getting more involved, and he's all he had a good game the week before the bye. So, like, I don't have issues starting Lamb, and I advise my audience to do it basically every single week. So unless you've got like a Jamar Chase and you've got like I'll run you through my rankings again because the video is already out. So like this week I've got Tyreek Hill at 1, AJ Brown at 2, Jamar Chase at 3, Stephon Diggs at 4, Cooper Kupp at 5, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 6, Devontae at 7, Mike Evans at 8, Puka at 9, Adam Thielen at 10. Addison at 11, and CD at 12. So if you've got like 3 guys that you're already playing over CD Lamb, like I would say, okay, you could sit Lamb, but you probably don't. So I would say that I would play CD Lamb over the majority of options. But again, appreciate the super chat, guys. And I will answer just 2 more questions, guys, and then I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the night. I've got to make the kicker ranking video, and I'm going to make the tight end ranking video as well. So appreciate you guys here. Going to answer 2 more questions, then I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the night. All right. Should I put Ramondre Stevenson in or Alexander Madison? I can never tell who is more reliable. That's a good question because they're both not reliable. Like that's the ultimate problem here with Ramondre Stevenson and Alexander Madison. Neither one of them are reliable here. So Ramondre Stevenson, to me, is the play here this week because when I look at both matchups, neither one of them are bad. Like Alexander Madison, he's playing the Green Bay Packers. Great matchup. Ramondre Stevenson playing the Miami Dolphins, also a good matchup for a running back. So really what the separator here is for me is the volume, because they're both not efficient players. And when I look at the volume here, they're very close, but Alexander Madison doesn't see as many targets as Ramondre Stevenson does. So from a target perspective, in a matchup where they're probably going to be down and they're going to need to throw the ball, why am I saying Raheem Mostert? Ramondre Stevenson is just simply too important to this offense. He's way too important to the offense. So he's their best weapon. They can't afford to not use him. So yeah, I'll go with Ramondre Stevenson here over Alexander Madison because Alexander Madison week to week, like he could do nothing. Like look at Monday night's the perfect example. Dude comes in and yeah, he starts out the game, but Cam Akers has plenty of carries and Ty Chandler's involved as well. You don't see that in New England quite as much. You see Zeke does have involvement, but there's no 3 running back system over there. And Ramondre gets the targets. Like Zeke is not stealing targets away from Ramondre. So I'll go with Ramondre Stevenson here. Last question of the night. Live creation. Flex 1, full PPR. CeeDee Lamb, Christian Watson, Zay Flowers, or T. So it's tough to put Zay Flowers on the bench, but I will do it for CeeDee Lamb. Christian Watson's no way I'm starting him over any of those guys. T. Higgins, he's my number 3 option. I think that there's always the capability that T. Higgins has a great game. So it really comes down to the Zay Flowers and the CD Lambs of this conversation, because he is in a situation where, Zay Flowers gets the targets, but the upside is good, but it's not like he's ripping off 100-yard games and like multiple touchdown games. Like, that's not what his offensive upside is. So CD Lamb has that. And I get it. CD Lamb hasn't done it yet this year. He did have 100-yard game before the bye week. So I like the trajectory he's on this week. And I love the matchup against the Rams this week. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the night. I appreciate y'all being in here tonight. Please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. I will see you guys in tomorrow's videos. We've got the kicker ranking video for Week 8 fantasy football and the tight end rankings video in Week 8 fantasy football coming out tomorrow, guys. So I will see y'all tomorrow's videos. Peace.